Welcome to Arif KBRA, a place where silence speaks, where every shadow hides a secret, and every whisper tells a story. Here, bedtime is never safe, because the night has its own tales to share. So, close your eyes, listen carefully, and remember, once you enter this world, you may never leave the same. Whispers from the Abandoned Manor. There was a reason the old manor stood empty for decades. Locals whispered about it, calling it cursed, haunted, a place where silence had weight and shadows had lives of their own. But Daniel didn't believe in such things. He only saw opportunity, a massive house for a price so low, it felt like stealing. He told himself the townsfolk were just clinging to old legends. And so, on a rainy evening, suitcase in hand, Daniel unlocked the heavy wooden door of the manor and stepped inside. The air was stale, thick, and cold. The moment the door closed behind him, the outside world felt distant, muted, as though swallowed. His footsteps echoed across the wide hall, dust swirling in the faint beam of his flashlight. Faded portraits lined the walls, their eyes watching him, their faces half lost to time. "Just old paintings," Daniel muttered. But his voice sounded small in the vast, hollow silence. He wandered through the rooms, a drawing room with broken furniture, a dining hall where the long table was still set, as if waiting for guests who never came, and the staircase spiraling upward into the dark. By the time Daniel reached the second floor, night had fallen completely. The storm outside howled and the manor groaned as though alive. He chose a bedroom to sleep in, once lavish, now ruined by dust and cobwebs. He lit a candle, set it near the bedside, and tried to settle down. But as he closed his eyes, he heard it. A whisper, so faint he thought it was the wind. But no, this was different. It was inside the room. At first it was just one word carried on a breath he could barely catch. "Leave." Daniel sat up. His candle flickered violently. The room was empty. The door was locked. He tried to calm himself. "It's nothing. Just my imagination. The storm, the creaking wood." But then it came again. This time, clearer. "Leave. Now." Daniel's skin turned cold. He could feel the whisper against his ear, though no one was there. His eyes darted across the room to the corners, the shadows that seemed thicker than they should be. Suddenly, the mirror across the bed quivered, just slightly, as if touched by unseen hands. And in the candlelight, Daniel thought he saw movement. A shadow, not his own. He froze, breath caught in his throat. The whisper returned, almost pleading this time. "Leave, before it wakes." The candle went out, and Daniel was swallowed by darkness. The darkness swallowed Daniel whole. The candle had died without warning, leaving only the sound of rain hammering against the windows, and his own heartbeat pounding in his ears. For a moment, he didn't move. He sat frozen on the bed, afraid that the slightest sound would draw attention to him. And then, he heard it again, a whisper, but this time, not from the air. It came from the walls. Daniel. His name, soft, drawn out, as if the house itself was calling to him. He reached for his flashlight, hands trembling. When the beam finally flickered on, it cut through the shadows, sweeping across the room. Nothing, just the mirror, the dusty curtains, the empty floorboards. But the whisper persisted, low, layered, as though more than one voice spoke at once. "Daniel, don't stay, don't stay." He stumbled back toward the door, grasping the handle. It refused to budge, stuck, locked from the inside, yet unmoving, as if something pressed against it from the other side. The whisper grew louder. Now, it was all around him. Above, below, inside the walls themselves. He pressed his ear against the cold plaster and heard it, crying. A faint sob, muffled, as though a child wept behind the walls. Daniel staggered back. His flashlight flickered, dimming. The crying turned into a whisper once more. Urgent, desperate. "They will see you. They will find you." The mirror across the room rattled violently, as if something wanted to push through it. His flashlight died. The crying stopped, and in the silence, something else began. Knock, knock, knock. Slow, heavy, coming from inside the walls, moving closer, step by step, toward him. Daniel backed into the corner, every breath shallow, his body cold with fear. The knocking stopped just behind him, and then a voice right against his ear. "Don't turn around." Daniel stood, frozen. The voice had whispered directly into his ear, warning him not to turn around. Every muscle in his body screamed to move, to run. But terror held him still. Seconds stretched into eternity. The silence in the room was so heavy, he could hear the pounding of his own pulse. Slowly, his trembling hand reached again for the flashlight. The beam flickered back to life. The room was empty, but the corner of the mirror was cracked. A hairline fracture that hadn't been there before, as though something inside had tried to break free. Daniel stumbled out of the room at last, the door suddenly giving way, as if nothing had ever held it shut. He hurried down the hall, his footsteps echoing far too loudly, chased by the thought that he wasn't alone. The manor seemed alive that night. Every creak of the wooden floor, every groan of the old beams above felt intentional. Watching, waiting. At the end of the corridor, he saw it. A single door, different from the others, heavy with iron hinges, and a lock so rusted it looked centuries old. Something about it pulled him closer. He shouldn't have approached, but he couldn't stop himself. The air grew colder. The candle in his hand sputtered, threatening to die again. And from behind the door, faintly, came the sound of scratching. Not random, rhythmic, as if fingernails dragged across wood, again and again, in slow, deliberate strokes. Daniel leaned in, breath shallow. And then, a whisper, clear, sharp, urgent. "Don't open this door." His blood froze. The voice was not the same as before. This one sounded closer. This one sounded alive. And yet, his shaking hands reached for the rusted lock. Click. The lock snapped open. The scratching stopped. And in the silence, something inside the room slowly began to breathe. The lock had broken with a sound that echoed too loudly in the silence. Daniel stood before the door, his breath fogging in the icy air. breathing inside the room had stopped, the stillness that followed was far worse. With trembling hands, he pushed the heavy door open. It groaned on its hinges, the darkness inside thicker than any he had seen before. His candle barely pierced it, flame shrinking as if afraid to enter. The room was small. Dust suffocated the air. A bed frame rotted in the corner, draped with torn sheets that looked older than memory. And on the far side, a desk, upon it, a single object, a book. Its leather cover cracked, its pages yellowed, edges blackened by time. Daniel stepped closer, each footfall sinking into the silence like a trespass. The candle flame stretched long and thin, shadows writhing on the walls as if alive. He picked up the book. It was a diary. The first page, brittle, written in ink that had faded but not disappeared. November 3rd, 1891. The voices have returned. Mother says I must not listen, but they call to me every night. They know my name. They tell me secrets. I am afraid, yet I cannot stop. Daniel's hand shook as he turned the next page. The entries grew darker. Talk of shadows moving when no one was there. Of whispers that grew louder when the house slept. Of dreams that bled into waking. Then he reached the final entry. The handwriting was frantic, broken. They are in the walls. They want me. I hear them scratching, closer each night. I cannot hide. If anyone finds this, don't open the locked door. Don't let them out. Daniel froze. The diary slipped slightly in his hand, his chest tightening with the realization. This was the very door he had just opened. The silence shattered. From inside the walls of the room came a sudden, violent scratching. Dozens of hands clawing, desperate, furious. The candle guttered violently. The mirror across the hall cracked further, as though something on the other side pressed against it. And then, faint, layered, unholy, came the whispers. You shouldn't have opened it. The diary trembled in Daniel's hands. Its words echoed in his mind, heavy with warning. Don't open the locked door. But it was too late. The scratching inside the walls had begun again. This time, louder, angrier, closer. Daniel backed away from the desk, heart pounding, when something caught his eye. On the last page of the diary, beneath the desperate scrawl, there was a small symbol, a crest, a family insignia. He had seen it before. Yes, downstairs, carved into the frame of the grand portrait that hung above the fireplace. The family who once lived here, the owners of the manor. Compelled by a force he didn't understand, Daniel left the room, clutching the diary tightly. The corridor groaned with every step, but he pressed on until he reached the great hall. Lightning flashed through the tall windows, illuminating the faded portrait. A stern man in dark attire, a woman by his side, and between them, a young boy, pale-eyed, unsmiling. At the bottom of the frame, the same crest, the family's mark. Daniel lifted the candle closer, his shadow stretching unnaturally across the wall. That's when he noticed something he hadn't before. The boy's eyes. They seemed different now, not painted, not still. They glistened, reflecting the candlelight as though they were real. Daniel staggered back, breath sharp, nearly dropping the diary. The storm outside roared again, and with it, whispers filled the hall. The family is still here, bound to this place. The curse keeps them forever. The diary slipped open in his hands to a torn page near the middle, one he hadn't read yet. The ink there was darker, bolder, almost burned into the paper. Father made a pact. Mother begged him to stop, but he would not listen. He wanted power. He wanted the house to live forever. But the house does not belong to us anymore. It belongs to them. And now, so do we. The whispers grew frantic, overlapping. Dozens of voices at once. The boy's painted smile in the portrait curved, just slightly. Daniel stumbled back toward the stairs, clutching the diary to his chest. But before he could reach the steps, every candle in the hall flared to life at once, flooding the room in flickering orange light. And there they were. Figures, half shadow, half human, standing in the corners of the hall, watching, waiting. Their eyes glowed faintly, the same pale light as the boy in the portrait. And from all directions came the same words, spoken in a chorus of whispers. The curse is yours now, Daniel. The hall burned with candlelight. Though Daniel had lit none of them, shadows stretched unnaturally high, twisting like figures dancing along the walls, and in every corner they stood, faded remnants of the family, pale eyes fixed on him. Daniel clutched the diary to his chest, his breath ragged. The whispers closed in, a chorus of voices layered atop one another. He is ours now. The house has chosen. The boy from the portrait stepped forward. No longer paint, no longer bound to the canvas. His pale face flickered in the light, lips curling into a smile far too wide. Daniel stumbled backward toward the staircase, but the air grew heavy, pressing him in place. The boy's voice cut through the whispers, calm, cold. You opened the door. You broke the seal. The curse lives through you now. Daniel's hands shook as he flipped frantically through the diary, searching for answers. And there, hidden on a torn page, he found a final line, scrawled in desperate ink. The only way to silence the whispers is to give the house what it wants. His breath caught. What does it want? He whispered aloud, though no answer came. The candles flared brighter, the shadows closed in, and then, sudden silence. The boy tilted his head, eyes fixed on Daniel, and whispered with a voice that shook the air itself. It wants you. The diary burst from Daniel's hands, pages scattering like feathers in the storm of whispers. Every figure in the hall stepped closer, their pale eyes glowing brighter. The floor groaned beneath him, splitting, revealing darkness yawning below. Daniel tried to scream, but no sound escaped. The shadows seized him, pulling him downward into the black. The last thing he heard before the manor swallowed him whole. Welcome home. The whispers faded. The manor stood silent once more, its secrets sealed, waiting for the next soul foolish enough to enter. You've heard the whispers tonight, but the story is far from over. The manor still hides its secrets, and the night will always return. If you wish to uncover what lies beyond the shadows, follow the voice and come back here to Arif KBRA, because the darkness is waiting for you.